Deicide. Does it work? Yes, it does work. Hello and welcome to Deicide. I'm your host, DeamonMachine, and today I'm joined by HiRezBart, the esports manager for HiRez there, over on the left. Krett here from BLG.na. IamDazer from Nubreed. Yes, new teams popping up. We love it.
Yeah.
Sprayarn from the Copenhagen Wolves. Everybody knows Sprayarn. Thank you guys for joining me. And I guess we'll start it off right away into what is going on in the tournament section with HiRez. Bart, do take it away.
Well, let's see. We announced yesterday on Reddit. I've announced it on my show. It's kind of been a soft launch of basically a tournament. That's not really a series, I guess, per se, or a league per se. But for the near future, we will be running in-house now $1,000 a week in NA and EU of weekly tournaments. These are not seeded towards a monthly final or anything like that. It is simply each week you have an opportunity to play. Currently, the thinking is that we will be running. We're still basically nailing down whether or not it's going to be weighted brackets or it's going to be an actual kind of seed base that resets. But you know, in general, you want to make brackets that aren't going to have the top two teams in the region playing against each other in the first round. So there'll be some amount of control around that. That's not just like, well, we randomize the bracket and then we put these two guys on opposite sides. Just to avoid any kind of favoritism, we'll look for some kind of mathematical way to do it. But in general, that's the plan, is that each week there'll be $2,000 of prizing available, $1,000 for EU, $1,000 for NA, and there'll be region-locked tournaments that you can participate in week over week with really no end game in mind at this point. I mean, obviously we will work towards something more like that, and you'll probably see this change in some medium amount of time on a timeline. But as of right now, it is one-off weekly tournaments. Okay.
Sweet. So you guys just wanted to bring it in. Is there any particular reason behind doing that? Like, was there any, like, this is why we wanted to do this because of X?
Well, I mean, to be perfectly clear, it had nothing to do with the way the tournaments were managed or run by, by My Revenge or Curse or any of the other third-party providers that we worked with. Some of it is that, we have bigger goals for where this will go, and this is the first step. Right, is that we need to proof out admins that we want to work with, like yourself and Blake. We're bringing in additional staff around this. We have a lot of moves that we're making to try to continue on, down the path of making competition a more and more exciting thing for the players. So this is baby steps, right? Kind of similar to how the 10K events that we run are kind of baby steps towards eventually we will be running a $100,000 event around the release of the game, most likely.
Yeah.
So this is similar to more of maybe a league format or setting that we would like to move to eventually, but of course we have to proof it out and get the people in place. So I would imagine this will evolve fairly quickly out of a weekly tournament to potentially something with monthly finals or maybe like 4 times a year international stuff. Like it's kind of hard to tell at this point, but I would expect that my guess, and this is very much a guess, not a not
insight
the path that I'm guaranteed that we're taking, but because a lot of this is obviously still up at the executive level in our company of exactly where it's going to go. But my guess is you see something like you have the weekly tournaments, and then maybe we start doing like, okay, those are seeded towards a monthly final or something like that, or at some point we say, okay, the next 8 weeks of competition seed you towards the next 10K event we're having, and then potentially after that you would move towards something like, and then we're also going to have this international final in between these two. Every 2 months, every 8 weeks, there'll also be a separate seeding for an international final where we put up more money or those types of things. That would be my guess, is that it will be the baby steps that you'll see start coming out next. And then obviously the end goal is to be more in terms of like a tournament series or a league or something that's not only run off of the in-game ladder, but also through this big tournament portal sort of idea.
Yeah. That'll be fun. Hopefully we'll eventually get to some weekday games that we can have instead of just cramming everything in on the weekend. I think that would be a nice move at some point, like having one game Monday, another game, another set of games Tuesday, stuff like that. That'd be a lot of fun.
You mean you don't like having 4 tournaments at the same time?
Yeah, I love it. It's great.
Me too. You get to pick which ones you play.
Yeah.
I mean, in general, doing weekly tournaments is something like, unless there's enough money in the scene that players can actually be like full-time professional players, how are you going to ask somebody to play in a tournament at 3 p.m. on a Wednesday in America?
Yep.
Or that starts right at whatever ungodly hour, 21 CET. You know.
Oh yeah, I mean, well,
your
you'd want to do it something like where you would schedule their games to be just one pair of teams plays, best of 3.
No, it would have to be a ladder to do that efficiently, I think, right? Where it would be like, you know, you can challenge these guys at any point, and you want to build port and starts climbing the ladder. And when the top 4 teams in the ladder at the end of the period get invited to a tournament, that there also is a qualification. That kind of thing certainly will work. Yeah. But I think it's kind of hard to do weekly. Although, I mean, obviously, there's only so many days on a weekend that we can actually schedule things, so we'll see.
Very true. Very true. So, well, that's cool. Anybody have any questions about this, I guess, in the chat, or would like to call us up, feel free to. We'll be taking questions throughout the whole show about everything, so if you'd like to call, please do. We'll go ahead and move on to the wrap-up as soon as there it is. So, this past weekend of what happened was, in the Worth It tournament, we had SK Gaming took first, Vel took second, and BLG.EU and Victoria's Secrets didn't try to play for the third. Actually, Victoria's Secret dropped out, just after they won the semifinals, I believe, because they were getting ready to go. They wanted to play in the Curse tournament, and so that's what Vel got kind of tossed up into the finals, and then Vel just kind of got rolled. So it would have been good to see Victorious versus SK. That would have been a good game. So SK took that one over in the let's see, Curse of the Gods number 9. Root wins. Victoria's Secret came in second, so they put their worth out there, and then Denial came in third. Over in Eden Grounds, God help me if I can read these brackets right. I hope I got them right. It's just adding up smelly perns, tryhards, and fried chicken fighters is how I perceived it as the top 3, because there is not really a final. This is who won, this is who lost. It's just a bunch of round robin numbers. And then Sunday, over in the BLG Casually Competitive number 12, Pizza Gaming took first place. They took it over Smite Ace, and then Cruel Warfare came in third. So that was it's very fun, very exciting action. That was actually a really, really good series of games. And over in the Joust Me Bro, Zappo, QQQ, and then Problem Haters, because nobody likes to play the third, fourth place match. And then finally, My Revenge. Snipe Gaming came in first, BLG.EU came in second, and SK came in third. So it seems relatively normal, although we did have a little bit of a change up in things with Victorious coming in second over there on Curse, and Denial coming in third. So Curse got knocked out, as well as Snipe. Did Snipe even participate in Curse of the Gods? I believe they did.
They did.
Yeah.
Okay.
They lost to us in the second round.
Cool.
Yeah, that was the game that HiRock carried really hard with Naja.
Yeah.
That was what yeah, we've got Fenrir around here. So that was the wrap-up. Any comments or questions about the tournaments that just happened this weekend? No? Cool.
How unsafe is Naja?
How unsafe is Naja?
That's a question for Sprayarn. I mean, they were the only team that played him successfully. I mean,
how unsafe is it?
I mean, how big of a risk is it to run that over Wukong or another? I mean, if you're going to run a melee carry.
Personally, I have no idea, because I wasn't the one playing Nesha. It was basically HiRez saying that he felt that Nesha was really, really good, and yeah.
I mean, we saw when it was like what the team comp they faced you with was like. It was like Apollo, Amir, like those kind of gods. And then the next game when you played Naja, and it was up against like Thor, Bacchus, and really the Thor just seems to crush that god, because the range stuns can shut it down from so far. And you would see Apollo ult in, try to do the damage to Naja. Naja would pop sprint and just run around. And if he missed the auto attacks, that was pretty much it. But with Thor, with the stunning, it seemed to shut him out really hard. And in your opinion, and I guess I'll toss this up to everybody, is. And it seems to me that Fenrir is going to have a fairly similar kind of role in terms of where he can carry, where there's certain gods that are just going to shut him down, and that he's very, he's very melee and space dependent. And he's really, really easy to lock down, I feel like, with his number 3. What's your opinion on, I guess this is segueing into the next kind of topic.
Works great.
on Fenrir's viability. In relation maybe to Naja, and then in general?
I think he will be very, very viable. I think he has really good DPS output. He has something that carries don't. He has a double leap, which is pretty huge. And he has damage, of course. I'm still a bit disappointed in his ulti, to be honest. I want his ulti to feel more epic. His ulti was more like, I become a big bad wolf, and I'm just gonna take one guy like backwards. Like it just doesn't make it too much sense. I don't know.
I like it. I think it's pretty neat. Of course, the first time that he showed it off on the stream, everybody's like, "What?" Everybody freaks out. But
I mean,
that was one of them.
If I were to like have his ulti, I will make his ulti more like a mix between Bacchus and Amanas. So he like gains attack speed, lifesteal, and all that stuff, and some AoE.
More of a big steroid than a.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
than a player removal series. Yeah, actually, Mr. Payne Divion messaged me earlier and was saying that with a Girdle of Might level 3 and a Warrior Tabby level 1, at player level 2, he did 555 damage with 4 runes, with the full stack of runes, and using his. I don't know if it was using his number 2 or
Using his 3.
using his 3.
Yeah, probably the 2 and the 3.
Yeah, probably the 2 and the 3.
Yeah.
Probably the steroid and the 3.
I mean, but that's just the effective Girdle of Might.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
And-
it's not really that indicative of anything, is it? I mean, like, you're hitting him 4 times basically with an extra damage, a double steroided auto attack.
Yeah.
One thing I noticed with Fenrir is that he can be really cancelled down like pretty early with Hades. Just use his 2 and then his 3 is pretty much useless, which is really one big counter to him. From what I've
It's a lot
noticed.
like Thor's spin.
Yeah.
Cool.
Hades is interesting. Hades becomes, to me, it's funny. He becomes like more and more. He becomes higher and higher tier because he's continues to be one of the only gods that has an effective silence.
Yeah.
And then like as that like as the game continues to progress and these more and more gods get put in with these sustained damage mechanics, like Bacchus and like with his burp and like the spin to win and the maul or what what it's called now, the number 3 on Fenrir. And then it's like you can just hard counter this with a Hades silence. It shuts it down, when it's going on. It's not like you continue to use the ability and then there's silence if it's still active on you after the duration. It shuts the ability down. So especially the fear, right? So
Yeah.
if you can, until there's more gods, I think, that have AoE or cone-based silences in the game, Hades will continue to rise in terms of picks. I wouldn't be surprised to see him, continue to climb and start being banned out just because of that. If you wanted to run some of these gods.
Yeah, I was playing Bacchus the other day, and I'm a support player, so like when I play Bacchus in normal queue, I actually know what I'm doing, and I just wreak destruction and get like top player damage because Bacchus is stupid. But I was laning against Thor and Hades, and that lane is just Bacchus can't do anything because you can't crowd control Thor.
Right.
When he's spinning and doing his damage, the thing that you have to stop to peel your carry from, you can't hit him with belly flop because he's immune to it. You have to try and peel with the burp, and the burp just gets silenced by Hades, so you just cannot peel Thor. And that's part of what makes Hades so good is that silence is just, it doesn't peel everything. Like, it's not going to really be super effective at getting Najah off your carry. Not compared to Ymir's freeze, but it's so fast and specific things, it just completely shuts down.
Yeah. Spray, do you have much experience with Hades?
Yeah, I mean, I think Hades is really, really good. He had, I think ever since Hades got the buff to him, the number 3, I think it was, he has become this pick where some teams pick him very, very often, and some teams don't. I think it's more like how people play the game, but I think Hades is one of those picks that he's never a bad pick. Like, he's always a good pick in a sense that if the enemy bans out like so big Bacchus, the enemy team will get Hades.
Yeah.
It's just how the game goes.
He's very useful in whatever he does. He's not just straight up, oh, this is terrible. He'll never be able to lane against X. It's, yeah.
The change was to Hades, just for the viewers out there. 2 months ago, maybe more now, his number 3 had a damage increase, and was changed, kind of how similar to how Kali's was changed as well. Her blood siphon, basically it immediately heals. You used to have a delay after. It used to be like you use the number 3, it would deal the damage, and then a second later, the blight would explode, healing you. It was made instant, and damage was buffed. So,
yeah.
The other thing about Hades is that, depending on the team you're up against, you might want to play him as a mage, and if you do, his ult is just going to do such incredible damage.
Yeah.
Like if you have a Cupid and you can actually keep people in the Hades ult, everyone will die.
Yep.
Yeah, so it can be very dependent on how well your Hades or your team is doing at the beginning. If he can be good because you can steer him into whatever direction you want him to go. If you're doing really well and you're getting fed off things, then you can build him right into a mage and do a lot of damage. If you're getting behind, then build him as a tank and make him absorb all that damage that you're going to have to deal with. I would say would be the good way of looking at it, because it makes him very versatile in his position.
Well, I mean, if you look at Hades, I mean, most players build him tanky, but they don't really have to. Like, you can still build him very heavy, maybe not heavy damage, but can still get it like a Void Stone, you know, Viso and all that stuff, and he will still be really good.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, the only weakness I'd say Hades has is he can't really initiate super hard with hard CC. Like, his sphere, people still run around a little bit. You can't get the really easy ult hits. So it's not going to be as good as Belly Flop. It's not going to be good as Blink Ymir. It's not going to be as good as a Guan ult. It's not going to be as good as a Sobek pull. But he's just got all these other things going for him that makes him really different, and that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Well, nice. Any questions from the chat on that, I guess, would be the question. No calls thus far.
And one thing that's, I guess, worth noting is that, just on the topic of Hades and what he brings to the table, and what, with Fenrir, so the way Fenrir's number 3 works is that it will follow you if you dash, so gods like Cupid, Shibalanke, whatnot, it'll continue to hit. If you tween, so that's I guess a game development engine term for basically it's like, we want you to move to this location, and instead of making an animation to do that, you procedurally create the movement. So many leaps or tweens, specifically like Hades' Death from Below will disjoint Fenrir's number 3. Certain leaps will as well, but in general dashes will not. So there's some interesting kind of, you should play around with that, I would say. There's different ways that you can actually disjoint Fenrir's number 3. If you can bait him to using it onto you, you can negate any hits beyond the first pretty easily with some specific gods. Pretty much anything that can go through a wall will disrupt his number 3.
Yeah.
Okay.
I faced an Agni, and it worked really well.
Yeah, he's very strong against Agni, right? If you can hit it, he's going to follow the Agni.
Yep.
Interesting.
One thing I don't know, maybe someone knows this. I didn't get a chance to test it, but do targeters work on invisible targets? Like, if Loki's invisible and you're Loki and you have your ult targeter up, does it show the dagger over the head of the invisible target if you get it on it?
It used to, but I switched to instant cast 2 months ago, so I don't know anymore.
Okay. Because, I mean, I don't know if that works with Fenrir either. Like, if it's number 3, which has I think a more forgiving ground targeter than Loki's ult, may be revealing stealth in a way. I'm not sure on that. That would be something also to look into.
Yeah, definitely. Well, cool. I guess that wraps up our conversation for Fenrir. But do we want to get into the rest of these giant amount of patch changes? Bart, I wanted to ask you, why did you guys decide to go with this 3-tier ability system?
Overwhelming community request.
Really?
I saw what you did there, Bart.
In general, not really something that I'm going to comment on as to why we do anything.
Right.
It's more of the answer is always the same, and the answer is always that it was something that internally we've wanted to, that we felt merited testing.
Okay.
After all, the game is a beta, and we wanted to see, in certain regards, does it bring added complexity to the meta? Does it? I mean, obviously, it's going to destabilize some things. Its current implementation, my feeling is that it's not tremendously going to change competitive. or even high-level play, but I think that it will exacerbate to an extent the ability for more experienced players to just stomp new players. It's been a long-standing, not really an issue, but something that we wanted to, that we want to incentivize people buying the actives, because at low levels of play, players don't buy them. Some of that's a education problem. Some of it's hard for a new player to look at something like, let's say, purification beads, and let's say it had a 90-second cooldown. It's hard for them to look at that and be like, I get killed every 25 seconds.
Yeah.
What the hell am I going to do with something on a 90-second cooldown? And because it's hard to understand, oh, well, that's also the cooldown of all the ults, and you can get out of them, and you'll die now. You'll die 7 times less this game, which means that you're 2 levels higher, which blah blah blah, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So,
yeah.
I think it's in general the kind of to roundabout answer your question on why would be to incentivize active purchase more, and potentially add more complexity to the game and build orders. But in general, the best answer is just because it was something that we felt was worth testing.
Cool. So it doesn't. It's kind of like the focus and or everything else that gets tested. If it's that bad, or if it turns out to be really problematic, it'll get reverted or something like that.
We are always able to revert. We can always go back.
Yeah. Like the passives on the active items. Oh, I miss those days.
Yeah, I mean, if you recall, passives were originally at 500 gold, I think. And then they were 250, and then they were 500 with passives, and they were 250, and then they were buffed, and then some of them were nerfed again, and then beads and agents had their cooldown tripled in the last 6 months, and there's been a lot of movement on those, and those are going to continue to be, I would think, a fairly oft tinkered part of the game until release, until then it's just balance changes and not mechanic changes.
Okay, so I guess to sum it up. Moving up to the release, there's always the possibility of major mechanic overhauls versus once you guys release, you plan to have everything. This is how we're going to leave it. They're going to have a really good reason if we change everything, kind of thing.
Yeah, more that. More like there'll be a good reason, or something more similar to perhaps what you see in League of Legends or other major competition games like StarCraft, where it's like, okay, we're going to change things between major seasons because esports is a big part of our game. But it would be disingenuous to say that there's no chance that there would be major mechanics overhaul after the release of the game. However, I would say that their barrier to doing that is certainly much higher than in beta, where it's like, you signed up to try things.
Yeah.
You wanted to be in the beta. Well, congratulations.
Welcome to our playground.
Yeah.
Well, cool. That's awesome. So, I guess, Sprayarn, what do you think is the biggest change in these active items thus far?
I will have to say Hand of Gods or Beats.
Yeah.
I think the Hand of Gods, now you can kill the Minotaur or Fire Giant at 20%. It's gonna change a lot, I think. That's gonna be massive. It's gonna be like, if the enemy builds Hand of Gods rank 3, you will be forced to. Because it's a lot of damage negated. Fire Giant at 20% health is still a lot of health.
Yeah, it is.
I would be.
I don't know.
What would yours be, Bart?
The thing I'm definitely most excited about out of the change is Creeping Curse having the healing debuff. I just think it's really good for the competitive meta. That there is another tool now. There's something else besides Divine Rune and Brawler Speed 6 that don't fit into builds very elegantly, that you can at least do something about, Hercules, Vamana, raw comps.
Mm.
Oh yeah, speaking of that, Bart, Heavenly on health is going to be massive now.
Yeah.
It's going to be so good.
I'm looking forward to seeing the Sios, Hand of the Gods, Vampiric Shroud, Heavenly Agility, Hell Snowball build. I'm sure it's coming.
Probably.
That's
25% healing buff. I'm not aware of that being a mechanic in any other game. Is that a League of Legends thing? I never played that really, but
it's on an item.
Okay. So I don't know. I don't really have a very good feel in terms of how tactically that can be used to burst heal. I'm assuming that there's lots of good things you can do with it. I'm assuming that things like Aphrodite, Heavenly Agility is going to be very strong in terms of the hot you can put on something. But we'll see. I still don't see Heavenly Agility being picked up very often for like professional play. I could be wrong, but I don't think it's gonna like. It's tremendously better than getting beads Aegis on a support.
The thing about Heavenly Agility is it's now, I think, 15% faster than Sprint, and it has a 30-second lower cooldown at max rank. So I think it is, in some ways, an alternative to Sprint if you don't need the firing speed thing.
Yeah.
Right.
If you just want everybody to get away. Well, I guess everybody chasing him down could also be useful as well. I mean, if you can get your people to follow him faster and then be ready to use their CC, and then you've caught him. But
it's always been interesting to see the abilities and like how especially top level players think about them. Like I remember when Heavenly Agility was first introduced into the game, and players were convinced that because you could stack them, it was going to be completely destabilizing. Like the game was completely different now because what if we all get Heavenly Agility and stack ourselves up to 600 move speed and go gank, and no one ever did it. But it was like, this is going to ruin the game. Like you can't just be able to move from lane to lane this fast. And no one buys Heavenly Agility still. So like, to some extent, you have to kind of take everything with a grain of salt.
yeah, does it still stack?
I believe so. Yeah.
Oh.
Now you put the idea in everybody's head.
Now, if the healing buff stacks, I don't know. That's a different story. But
that would be cool though.
Yeah, just get Hercules. And then
Hercules 2x healing.
Let him just tank the Minotaur from level 1.
Yeah, we'll see. Oh, speaking of which, your guys' opinion on the Minotaur acting as basically a structure now. You can't crit it, you can't lifesteal it.
I think that's good.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I think it's really good as well.
Slow clap.
Does it still take effect from Height of the Nemean and Mystical Mark?
Yeah, that's true.
Because, like, I used to be able to get Height of the Nemean and Mystical Mark and be like, alright, I can tank the Minotaur, and it's going to take 600 damage from my items. And that was kind of nice. By nice, kind of silly.
You're saying that doesn't apply now, or it still does?
I don't know. Probably doesn't if it's a structure.
No, I don't think it was. My guess is that the implementation was not like you are now quality structure. It's really like you can't be life stolen, you can't crit this object. What do I guess?
You think that they should change that to also not affect, like the Minotaur shouldn't receive reflecting damage and stuff like that? I mean, if we turn it to a structure, it sounds like we probably that probably would be a good idea, maybe.
Well, it takes magic damage.
Yeah, it does.
Like that's different than towers, right? Towers don't take magic damage. Towers take additional in-hand damage from mages that scales based off their magic power, but it gets dealt as physical. So because it can be hit by abilities, I see nothing wrong with it taking magic damage from Mystical Mark and Height of the Nemean Lion. Nemean Lion, maybe not, just because does it really need to?
Damage.
Yeah, it's gonna start hitting itself really hard if you can tank it for enough hits, or if you can Aegis reset it, and then that kind of things, but. Or if you get Heavenly Agility hell healed through it or something crazy, but like, but I see nothing wrong with Mystical Mark because you can
at the same time, if a team really wants to do that, they're probably giving up on things that are actually useful, like a Hercules with Height of the Nemean Lion gonna tank the Minotaur at the end of the game. You probably already won at that point,
right?
Yeah, that is very true. I like that change because it will hopefully cut down on the backdooring and the Nazar Fenrir jumping in there to just burn it down really fast.
Oh yeah. Speaking of Mystical Mark, I was playing tank last night, and I was like, this item is so expensive. Like, I don't know why, but it's so expensive.
The Mystical Mark?
Yeah. And then everyone yelled at him, "It's because of you! You and your team!"
The Mystical Mark was made that expensive initially because of NA cheese strats running 5 Mystical Mark Hand of the Gods back in the day. So I was like, okay, it needs to be a much bigger investment for a team to go 5 of them. And then, yes, Copenhagen Wolves like to run 14 of them on the team. So no reason to reduce the cost. It is a very expensive item, though. But it still is. I think it's in a pretty good space in terms of like. In like a free market kind of idea of like it's at a pretty good equilibrium in terms of the cost of it versus the demand, and you still see it picked up.
Yeah, true.
It's really good if you and your team are ahead. Really good, because then your tank can push, and tanks usually can't.
That's right.
Fair enough.
If we made it any cheaper, you would also probably see Ares become very, very strong. If he could get that early and have any kind of anti-push or push potential, that god would be ridiculous in terms of his player damage output and utility at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I heard some complaints and some various chat blowing up about the amount of magical power increase after using abilities has been increased from 5 to 10% on Hebo. Saying that, you know, he was in a good place before. Why was the buff necessary? Is that, I mean, do you guys have that opinion, Sprayarn? I mean, I presume you probably play a decent amount of Hebo.
I have played him a couple of bit, but I never thought that he would needed a more DPS buff. Ever.
Dazer, do you ever play Hebo?
No, I play support. I think, I don't know, I think maybe now might be just too strong, maybe. But I can't really say because I didn't really play too much of him.
Okay. Krett, do you have any opinion?
I have two opinions. First of all, I love it because people are now playing Hebo in Conquest Queue and they don't know how to play Hebo, and I just kill them. Two, who looked at HiRez's Hebo and said, yeah, we need to buff that? Because his Hebo is just an engine of destruction.
Well, I mean, in general, buffs are made based on where the god falls, right, in the total. I mean, right, obviously, it's like, you look, well, I mean, like, here's a really good example of something like that, right, like Bacchus. If you looked at the statistics, Bacchus desperately needs a massive buff. Like, massive. Like, he's, like, very, very low in terms of, like, if you have a Bacchus on your team, and you're not one of the top 100 players in the world, you are, like, way more likely to lose. Like, obscenely more likely to lose.
That's weird.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, and I every once in a while we'll go over to, like, the designers and, you know, be like, hey, you know, here's kind of like the balanced thoughts from the high end. Here's what we see a lot of. You know, it's like, you know, we should really think about nerfing Bacchus. Like, really, it's the burst damage. Just ultimate is just way too high for the rest of how how utility heavy his kit is. Blah 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 blah. And they're just like, we're basically giving you that nerf by not buffing him. because the player statistics on that god are just so low. Because I mean, if you think about Bacchus, it's a very difficult kit to understand if you're new to MOBA.
Yeah.
Like, you need to get rank 2 of your number 1 to be most efficient, and you need to have really good mana control, and you need to, like, make sure you have your meter up before you use your burp, or it's not going to be that effective, and it has a healing debuff that you need to know about, and, like, the knock-up setups are really strong, you know, blah, 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 on and on and on with Bacchus, right? Which makes him extremely good at competitive play, and he is almost worthless in low queues.
Wow.
But to kind of the point of Hebo, right, Hebo does very poorly as a whole, especially as a melee, or I'm sorry, especially as like a mage assassin type, in that he doesn't get very many kills, and he didn't have, so in general he just didn't have a very strong lane presence. He's good as a side lane carry, but he wasn't strong enough, and he couldn't hold mid against strong pushers. Now, whether or not a straight damage buff was the answer to that question, I will reserve judgment. But certainly I would say the buff was needed for that god based on those statistics. And unlike Bacchus, you don't see him being a high tier pick in competitive play. So he wasn't picked for competition. He wasn't picked for anything really but pub stomping. You know, you weren't going to pick it at parity with other players. And he didn't perform that well. So he needed a buff. Whether or not, you know, a 15% damage buff is necessary, we'll see. We'll see. I mean, that one, you know, that may get adjusted a bit. I really don't know. I guess it's like one of those things like Kali, right? It's like Kali got the kind of mechanic changes buff, and all of a sudden Kali is, you know, in the top 3, top 4 of like the best gods at many levels of play.
Yeah.
In terms of win rate and kill KDA and stuff. So, you know, you see her get nerfed based on that. So you may see something similar to Hebo if he does skyrocket up to, you know, kind of, he is the top tier mage, you know, burst damage pick. But kind of to your point earlier, you know, Sprayarn and is that, like, Hebo already was killing you with 1 DPS rotation.
Yeah.
Like, now he does that more. Like, instead of dealing 3,000 damage to you, he deals 3,300 damage to you, which killed you because you had a 1,200 health pool. You know, so it's like, kind of like, is it really going to buff him that much, or just make his harass outrageous with water hands? We'll see.
That was an experience I had earlier today, was getting just harassed over and over and over again to the point that I just had to go back too often.
Well,
yeah.
To comment on that, I was playing health today in mid against Hebo, and his auto sprout was hurting me a lot. Like, I was seriously, I was like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be the only thing I'd be worried about. So the other big thing I wanted to ask was wanted to ask Dazer and Krett about Vamana. With the amount of physical protection converted to physical power has been increased from 15 to 20%. Is that going to bring Vamana back up into playing more, or is he still kind of the if we have to, we'll play him?
I would say he's probably still more of the like if we have to. I don't think that's enough for him to get picked up more. But I didn't really play too much of him because like we never really ran with him too much. So yeah, I don't know about how Krett used him though. So
I mean, BLG.na made Vamana that like insane ban, and at this point, I think the logic behind that buff is clearly the unkillable ult Vamana just isn't going to work because he could just tower dive you at any level and it sucks. At this point, though, I think Vamana's greatest asset is that you're not going to kill him if you're 1v2 or 2v or 2v1 or 1v1, because he's just going to ult and walk away, or he's going to dash away, and you can't stop that unless you've got really, really good control and synergy in your kit. And right now, I think that's not valued by teams, but having a bruiser that can do that is hypothetically useful. I just don't think he fits given what he offers in that regards. Giving him more damage is nice, but I don't know if it's going to give him enough pressure that he's going to really be played. I mean, I don't know. Right now, it's like Vamana runs in and starts hitting people, and then you just hit him a bunch and he has to leave.
Yeah.
So Vamana's terrifying to buff.
Yeah.
He's very hard to get into a spot where he's effective and not just rolling everything.
Yeah.
Yep.
I would rather have him be a niche pick than be like, you just pick Vamana. You know, it's like, oh, I see they've picked Shibalanke and they want to Rice under tower. Well, what if we just go Vamana? And just towers are cute, you know? That's where he was at some point. You know, at certain points during the course of the game, it's just Vamana was just this unkillable death machine. And you couldn't slow him, you couldn't CC him, you couldn't do anything.
Yeah, especially when he had his move speed was unaffected when he was in his ult.
Yeah, and it was increased, right? It was just like you couldn't run from him or fight him. Like, what do you do?
Didn't he also slow you when he hit as well? It was some obnoxious.
No, he had more run speed. It was like his base run speed was going to be higher than yours, unless you were a tier up of boots on him, right? It was just like you got to pop sprint. So every 3 minutes you could survive a Vamana tower dive. Like if he hit you with his umbrella, you were dead. Was pretty much the way it went.
Do you know if you can use shielded recall during Vamana's ultimate?
No, I believe Vamana's ultimate is like Fenrir's ultimate in that, if I'm not mistaken, you cannot use abilities or activatable.
I know you can use sprint now, and Aegis.
Then likely, yeah.
Yeah, then Vamana might be a really powerful split pusher because he ults and shielded recalls. You can't crowd control him. You're probably not going to kill him in time.
Yeah.
Because as it says, you can kill Vamana in his ult. It's about as effective as a raw heal. But raw heals are still pretty effective. They make people a lot harder to kill. So Vamana, we might see him as a really annoying split pusher.
Krett, please stop, please.
Stop giving people ideas.
I'm not playing in the tournaments this weekend, so you can deal with that, Spray.
Oh god, it's gonna be so annoying.
To that effect, though, Fenrir could be the same thing. I mean, it doesn't have quite the same AoE presence that Vamana does. And one thing that's not really explored with Vamana is that Vamana with a golden bow is very, very effective. Similar to how Naja with a golden bow can be very effective. And that's dealing AoE in-hand damage, meaning that it will proc golden bow on every target, meaning that if you get the kind of perfect, I don't know if you guys play Dota, I know you don't play Dota, but for those people out there that know anything about Dota, like Dazzle heals, where like you get the perfect, like this guy is in between me and 3 of his minions, and I hit those minions, they all proc golden bow on him, and it explodes.
Much like Hades Devour Souls.
Correct. So you have, there's some things that are maybe still yet unexplored on Vamana, making him a really, really aggressive split pusher.
Very interesting. So then what, I guess this one's for Bart, what inspired the Hercules, he got a buff, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
It's his damage, the damage contribution from his losing health was increased.
Okay.
Again, this is a similar
statistic thing.
He was just really, he was really low, believe it or not, and which was pretty hard for me to understand because I feel like I can just crush everything that moves with Hercules. If you get an advantage, certainly. And he's a strong pick in competitive play. Somewhat situational, I guess, but he doesn't have the world's strongest laning phase until he starts getting his driving strike ranked up and his mitigate wounds ranked up significantly enough that he can, tank stuff at the well. Anyway, yeah, he was just really underperforming. Again, I think that's more of a there's to some extent that kit's kind of high concept for new players. Like, oh, I need to use this. Like, they just kind of like go in there, tank a bunch of damage, get low, and hit their number 3, thinking like this is a heal. Yeah, and it's like that's not really how it works, guys. So I think that in lieu of doing something like you guarantee some amount of healing from your number 3, or the threshold at which driving strike stuns is increased significantly, and things like that, I think it was this was a pretty safe way to just give him a little bit more likelihood of getting kills. It also makes him a bit more of a threat. Yeah. One of Hercules' biggest strengths, in my opinion, is just like he doesn't need items that badly to be effective, because driving strike stuns, he gets the extra damage from losing health, he has summonate tankiness, and with something like like boots and bulwark, he can eat a lot of damage, and still put out good damage and disruption with his ultimate. So I like the idea of buffing his base stats and not making him scale more or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that seems pretty good. So, was there anything else from this this patch that you guys wanted to ask or talk about?
Kali nerf.
Kali
seems. Yeah, she got a lure contribution on her Bloodlash, which I don't know. I mean, statistically, I'm sure Kali was like the alpha and the omega right after that buff, but I didn't see her in her kit. Honestly, like she had really good pressure, and her ult was annoying because you can't get her off of people, but. I don't know. She never really shined to me after that.
It's just I think it was just too easy to pub stomp.
Yeah.
Like just so much regen, so much you get a Void Blade, and like unless they're playing with some amount of coordination on the enemy team against your snowballed Kali, it's just game over. Like you couldn't take her down, I guess. The damage she could output was just so high in terms of the burst and whatnot. That would be my guess. Again, that one was more of just like, you look at the graph and it was like, here's everyone, or well, I guess I can do this on the camera, but like, here's everyone, it's going up of like efficiency, and then you kind of like just go up straight. And when you see something like that, you're like, yep, gotta adjust that. And the same respect to, things that are outliers on the low end, like you're 20% less likely to win a game with this god than any other god.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's probably...
As you see Stu saying in the chat there, Kali had far away the highest winning percentage of any god at all levels and ranks of play.
Oh, wow.
So,
Oh, look at that. Fair enough.
Yes, over Poseidon. In fact, Poseidon's win rate is not tremendously high. His damage output is quite strong in terms of like overall statistics, but we're much more likely to win with Kali than Poseidon. And as Stu saying, Poseidon's win rate is not that great. The carries that are like get guaranteed damage. So Kali, Shibalanke, they tend to be very high in terms of win rate. Like 2-3 combo and Shibalanke, the Blood Lash on Kali, big burst damage carries that are fairly safe tend to have the highest win percentage.
Yeah. So, all right, well, we need to wrap it up so Bart can go and do his thing because it's getting close to that time. And basically, upcoming tournaments this weekend. We have what? Is Curses running their... Are they doing the monthly finals Sunday after the EU tournament? Is that what I heard? I believe I heard that correctly.
I'll need to... and as you're saying there, surrounding your question is that Hell's win rate's fairly low, and that's... Again, anything that has a high concept kit is going to be pretty low.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bacchus Hell, etc. The Curse tournament, I believe, is running Sunday evening. Okay. Of course, we have Saturday starting at noon. We have coverage with me and... Lionheart, I guess this is an appropriate place to announce it. We're actually going to be joined by Best for competitive insight during this cast. Cool. So that should be pretty interesting. We're really looking forward to that. Something that, obviously that's another thing that we can provide being, not only the publisher and maker of the game. And, we can incentivize getting things like that. In EU, I know that it's going to be DM and Drybear. They're going to be starting that coverage on Sundays.
Yeah.
Maybe Spray, you can ask Lobster if he'd be interested in doing something like that, doing competitive insight, if you guys aren't going to use him as a sub.
loves doing insight.
I know. Well, Yuli has disappeared, and there's no other like ex-pro players, So
Yeah, that's we were looking yesterday, but haven't been able to find one just yet because Yuli's just kind of as he said, he hadn't touched the game in like a month. So
yeah, like I saw on Reddit, people are like, well, "Why don't you just get European casters?" And it's like, would you like to recommend some? I know,
please let me know.
I know, like he does, Julian Zerpelperg. It does good, German language and English language broadcasting for European, but I mean, it's like, and that's it. So who do you want?
Yeah.
So I guess that if anyone's out there watching and you fancy yourself a broadcaster, and you live in the GMT or CET time zones, holler. Says Stu said before this patch, Hercules, Vamana, Bacchus, and Hell had the worst win percentage, even among top 130 Elo level 30 players.
Interesting.
Which is really surprising that Bacchus is in that group for the top players.
I think maybe people are just getting rusty at him because most of the time they can't play him.
Yeah, maybe.
It's like, why would you bother practicing Bacchus for competitive play? You're not going to get him.
Right. Although we did see Bacchus quite a bit in last weekend's tournament, which was surprising to me.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, the European tournament starts at 9 a.m. Eastern, which is 1500 CET.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. And so we'll be up super early for that. You got to be there by 1400 CET to check in and stuff like that. So make sure you guys are aware of that, etc., etc. And if you are from any sides of the teams, contact me and or Blake, and we will point you to the right person depending on which region you're on. I'm the European admin. Blake is the NA admin. So please do contact us if you are teams and you would like to sign up, because we got to get things done like that. And just contact us in general. Other than that, Bart, do you have anything else you want to say before we go?
Well, yeah, I mean, I was definitely going to point out, if you are watching the show right now and you are interested in getting involved, DeamonMachine would be your contact for Europe. Blake for US, for at least for this first month, and then, we may have 2 admins or 2 points of contact for the region or something like that. We'll see moving on. Epidary asked why they check in so early, because you check in, and then, we can generate the brackets based on the teams that check in. So you need at least an hour plus. Timing on them, I guess, is something that's worth mentioning before I head out, because I've seen some amount of, kind of talk about that on Reddit. So 2 things I want to address. One is the timing. One is the decision to make it exclusive in terms of region. So the first thing I'll talk about is the regions. Basically, the rules currently state that you can sign up for 1 region per week. You can change regions in between weeks if you choose. This is something basically that, the teams that, or there was a lot of push and pressure to split this, and so what we decided to do is to split it, and we need to kind of gauge the interest from each region and also leave some room for it to grow in each region. So it's possible that Friday afternoon that we'll make an announcement that hey, we didn't get enough team signups for this region or that region, and if you want to, you can play in both. That's possible, but ideally we'd like to see how many teams come out to play in each region, and what the competition is like before opening it up to crossplay. The timing stuff. So there was some kind of pushback from the American teams about starting at noon Eastern, which is 9 a.m. on the West Coast for us. In general, that is a 2-part reason. One part being that the tournaments have been run at Saturday at noon since forever, and there's no reason to change that. And basically it makes it so that it's possible to watch it, at least some of it, if you're in Europe and you would like to. And then the same reasoning for the tournament timing on Sunday is basically that it's actually a bit later than they normally start.
It's earlier than they normally start.
I'm sorry, it's earlier than they normally start, but a bit later than, it's not noon in CET, because that would be 6 a.m. starts on the East Coast of America. So that one was pushed later to accommodate American viewers if they wanted to. So that's the reasoning behind that. Core viewer hours are very important right now. We will. So, and one thing, just like people will be like, well, why don't you just run replays? We will. But where it gets kind of weird is things like, so if you run a tournament that runs from 12 Eastern to 7 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Eastern is, let's see,
like
4 a.m. CET.
One.
Right. Or I'm sorry. Is it's 1 or 2 depending on where you are.
Yeah.
Or it's 12, 1 or 2 depending on if you're GMT, CET, or where Finland's time zone is. So then if you replay a 6-hour tournament there, then it goes to 8 a.m. CET, and then they play their tournament, and then you replay. Like, there's just not really a good way to replay it in which they can get the European tournament to start on time by rebroadcasting the American one on the same channel. However, that's something that we will continue to figure out a way to do it. Maybe it's just like you just have to do a minimal amount of editing to the broadcast and shorten it a bit. But and the plan is run the tournament, show the replays, run the next tournament, show the replays, and then have them available. So we'll be moving towards that. And thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you all you guys for all your opinions and all that you do, and for playing the game and enjoying it. And best of luck to you this weekend. Please let us know if there's anything we can do better for you in terms of running and administering these tournaments now that we have brought them in-house. And that will do it for me. Thank you, DeamonMachine, for the show as well.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So thank you guys for joining us. We will be back next week, likely joined by Bart. And so we will let him go, and I guess maybe we'll do a little Q&A with the pros afterwards if they would like to stick around. So
much love.
All right,
guys. Thank you.
Later, sir.
Bye, Bart.
We will go into the official outro.
Deicide.